As I'm recording this video, I'm not sure when it will actually be released. I'm not sure if it'll follow an official announcement from compLexity or if it'll just appear once we see them take part in the last chance qualifier for the main qualifier for the major. But in the video that I'm doing here, I want to talk a little bit about the new compLexity. Now, I did already make a vlog back when it was announced that Fraud would be returning to compLexity, where I kind of assessed and talked about that. So I'm not going to talk about Fraud really at all in this video. Just a quick recap. Obviously, a very well-known player from Counter-Strike 1.6, as well as a little bit of Counter-Strike Source. Has never really seriously competed in CSGO, only just briefly played a little bit with friends back in 2013, and he's now made this resurgence here in 2016, and we will just have to see how it goes, though I did speak about this in more detail in that vlog I just mentioned, and I will link a timestamp to that in the description below if you want to check it out. Obviously, Roka has returned in this team. We already knew that was going to be the case back when they were still trialing Rix and Sick. It was announced by Jason Lake that he definitely wanted to hold on to Roka and build around him. And I'm sure that there were some other teams out there who'd like to have gotten their hands on Roka, but he has remained on compLexity, and he will serve on this team just as he has his entire career as a peripheral type player. Being more of an aggressive lurk, though. I know a lot of people try to slot him as an entry fragger, and I think in some cases he might be if he is kind of lurking the side of the map on a default that the team eventually intends to hit. You could see him kind of leading the execution, but he is a peripheral player. He plays a lot of upper B on Mirage or Squeaky Door, or outside B on Cash, or solo long A on Dust 2, all these different positions that he typically plays. And he's a very, very good player. He's definitely one of the guys that people have their eye on. He comes up in conversations when people talk about trying to construct like a dream team for North America. Very good aim, very skilled. He is, I guess, a bit inexperienced compared to some of the other names that you might add to a Dream Team roster, but he's been playing in the pro CSGO scene for quite some time. Most of his career was with Elevate, whereas now he's spent some time with Tempo Storm, and now, of course, he's been on compLexity for a while now as well. So a very good player, quite versatile. Like I said, he can be an aggressive lurk. He can help lead executes, and he's just an all-around good player. Sancz also remains on the team as another peripheral player, so I assume that in like 1-3-1 type setups on a default it will likely be Roka on one end of the map and Sancz on the other end of the map. And again, just as I spoke about how if they intend to hit the side of the map that Roka is playing on, he might take kind of an entry role. The same would be the case for Sancz. If he happens to be playing the side of the map on a default that they look to execute, then Sancz may be kind of one of the ones, or one of the first two guys leading the charge on that attack. So again, quite versatile. Could see him being a lurker type player depending on how the tactic arises, or he could be seen as somewhat of an entry player. I know Warden, as the coach of this team, is a guy who has said time and time again to me personally, as well as even on his stream and such, he doesn't really believe in specific roles. He just believes in putting players in positions that they're comfortable in, and through the ebb and flow of the round, players either become an entry or a lurk on how things play out, on how they decide to react to their opposition, or what they feel might be best at the given time on an execute. So that's why you're kind of seeing these guys like Roka and Sancz be kind of in these flexible roles going forward. And Sancz has, throughout his career, also been quite good. I mean, when he was playing with Nylum back in the day, like way in early 2015, he kind of was part of a 1-2 punch with Automatic very early on, and he kind of served as an entry fragger at times and more of a passive player at times with compLexity prior to this change. And he hasn't been the big standout in many of these teams that he's played on, but he's still a pretty solid player who's gained a good amount of experience over the past year or so with teams like compLexity and Nylum. And so, a pretty stable part here in the machine that is compLexity. So now we'll focus on the two newcomers to the team. So first up is going to be Shinobi, a younger guy, a more inexperienced guy. He's never played professional CS before. I'll admit I have a bit of a personal bias because I know Shinobi. I used to play with him and against him back in like ESCA main and Counter-Strike Source years ago, and we've remained pretty good friends and talked a lot ever since. In CSGO, you probably would mostly know him for being the in-game leader and a supportive type player for the most recent rendition of Denial at this time, the one that won the last season of ESEA Premier just a couple of months ago, and were on their way potentially to the Pro League, though they did lose a relegation match to Winterfox, and their future was uncertain at that point. However, we've already seen guys like Sick and Vice go play for TSM. Not sure what's going to happen to the rest of the guys that are from that team, such as like Whitmer, who's maybe another guy out there that people might be interested in. I know he might have been even considered for this compLexity team for a little while, but he will come onto this team as an in-game leader, though of course he will have Warden support behind him as a coach. And that will be basically his role for the team, to be kind of a supportive role player as well as an in-game leader. Now, I know Shinobi is quite a smart guy. I mean, yes, he certainly has never led a top team at a professional level, but he did a pretty good job with Denial, taking guys like Sick and Vice, who no one had really ever heard of, and then Whitmer, who never really had any experience in CSGO, and he was able to put these guys together and lead them to winning ESEA Premier and even having a shot at becoming a Pro League team. So that's a pretty good accomplishment under his belt as a leader. I know he watches a lot of CS. He studies CS daily. He's a guy that's watching demos. He's analyzing things. He's trying to figure stuff out and learn as much as about the game. He's very much a student of the game, and so I know he certainly puts in the time he needs to learn what he needs, basically, not only from opponents like scouting and maybe even picking up strats and cool plays that he likes to see from other teams, but also he is a guy who will self-reflect, who will kind of study his own team's footage and kind of find things that he feels might not work, or try to improve upon things. And again, with Warden's support, I think that they can combine together to be a pretty good group of leaders for this team. But it is true, like I said, I know I have a personal bias. I don't want to sit here and just, build them up all the way without giving any cons, so to speak. It is very true that Shinobi is still quite inexperienced. I already mentioned he's never really played at a pro level before. I've never really seen him at any LANs either. I'm not sure if he's been to any smaller LANs, but he certainly hasn't been to any ones that were of note, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that type of environment. For one, obviously, nerves can get to you, jitters can get to you. He's not playing a high-pressure fragging position, so I don't know if it'll affect him too much, but it is true that, he does have a huge responsibility of leading this team. He's coming kind of out of nowhere, so to speak, and he's trying to lead a team that has aspirations to, be in this E-League. The Turner League that's going to be on television, to try to make it to major qualifiers and maybe even majors, to try to be a playoff contending team in the North American scene. And that is a lot of pressure to put on someone who doesn't have that experience. And I know that maybe you see this guy at a LAN, there's a lot on the line, maybe things aren't going so well. We'll have to see how he handles that type of pressure. I mean, sure, leading is all fun and games when your team's dominating, but how do you lead your team out of a rut? How do you play from behind and lead a team that's trying to make a comeback? When times get tough, will he be able to keep his composure and keep his teammates on the right track? Obviously, you'll have Warden to help him, but he still bears a big responsibility in that, and that has yet to be seen. We'll just have to kind of keep an eye on it and see how it goes going forward. But he's a decent player. I think he'll put up the numbers he needs to for his role, and we'll just have to see how well he leads the men at compLexity going forward. Now, the fifth player for the team is someone that I have pretty much no clue about, and maybe that's the case for some of you out there as well. He goes by the name of Deph. I think I'm pronouncing that right, D-E-P-H-H. I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to pronounce that, sorry. I'm just going to say Deph throughout this thing, and if it's wrong, oh well, what can I do? But from what I understand, he's a player from the UK scene that has apparently shown a lot of promise in that scene. Of course, that scene is quite the laughing stock of CSGO, I guess you can say. Nothing really of note coming out of the UK and CS for quite some time. Apparently he was good friends with Roka, and that's apparently what kind of kickstarted the conversation with this player. Apparently Deph will join the team as being kind of an entry fragger type player. So again, if they're attacking the side of the map that Roka is on, he would be like right there next to Roka trying to open up the site. and then if you they make a play towards Sancz inside of the map, then he would kind of be leading with Sancz inside of the site, while Fraud just kind of sits back and, you know, covers them with the op as they're flooding into the site. Of course, Fraud will be involved in, you know, leading picks as well at times, I'm sure, but that's the general strategy for the team from what I understand from talking with Shinobi, who is their in-game leader. So that is apparently his role. Again, I've heard that he's a pretty insane fragger, especially in a lot of the online matches he's played in the UK. I did try to ask Henry G about him, since I know Henry G's from the UK scene, but he says he doesn't really know much about him either, other than that he's heard that he's been really good online, but it's been maybe just slightly above average at some of the lands, like the I-Series stuff they do over there in the UK. So this is another huge question mark. You know, right? Like we already talked about Shinobi. What is he going to bring to the table? Is he going to pan out? It's the same thing with Deph. So you can see complexity's kind of taking a gamble on two youngsters. You kind of have the veterans from compLexity with Roka and Sancz. You have Fraud, who's just like the CS veteran, who has, you know, been a big name in CS for most of its, you know, history, I guess you could say. And then you have the two new guys that are almost getting kind of past the torch, so to speak. So this is very much a mix of old and new trying to come together and make something happen. I wish I could talk more about Deph, but there's really not much I can say other than some results that he's had online in the UK, where he did look like he put up some pretty ridiculous numbers there. But what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? You know, never really seen him against top international competition. Haven't even seen him play, you know, against some of the top teams in the NA scene, which would likely still be a different level of competition compared to what's in UK. So we'll just have to kind of sit back and see. There's a lot of things that are going to have to go right for compLexity if they are going to be able to be a contender for the top of the NA scene. But it seems like they have a lot of guys with the right mindset who will put in the time that is needed to try to be the best that they can be. As far as where I see them at, probably right somewhere between like 5th and 8th in the NA scene, kind of next to like TSM. I did a video about them where I kind of mentioned I think they would start kind of 5th, 6th. I think this team will be kind of right at that same area. I think teams like Liquid, CLG, and Cloud9 will still probably be towards the top, where you have teams like Optic, the TSM, this compLexity team, Enemy. Those are going to be the guys that are going to kind of be fighting for the 4th spot for LAN. Obviously, you have Luminosity, who competes in the NA region right now, who's also like a top, you know, 3 team in the North American region, since they compete in it, but they're Brazilian. So if you're just looking at NA teams only, then yeah, I think this team could be kind of a middle of the pack team to begin with, and we'll just have to see where they go from there. But yeah, I just want to make a quick video to give kind of some initial reactions about the new compLexity lineup, as well as give you a little bit of information about some of the folks that will make up the team, to kind of, you know, give you a little bit of insight. Again, sorry I couldn't give you too much about Deph, but I just don't know much there, but I tried to give you what I could. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and follow for more. Thanks a lot.